law and started the movement. And when I was working in space, I didn't see as many survivor leaders. And when I was at Vital Voices and I had the opportunity to put this leadership program together I think we started in 2012, I saw what country governments are doing. So it's not like how our government's addressing trafficking in persons in 188 countries. And the thing about the thing about the TIP report is not only does it give you a narrative about what they're doing well, what they're not, it gives you a tier ranking for 1, 2, tier 2 watch list or tier 3. But it's the only report that says if you go down to tier 3, there is a hammer, and that hammer is that country is no longer able to receive non-humanitarian, non-trade related assistance. So that means that they don't get to participate in cultural programs, they don't get to bring diplomats to the country. It encourage, I call it gentle, relentless, gentle, relentless pressure. To make them do better where they can. And so that's one of the things that we do is we issue this trafficking in persons report. Another thing we do, that's kind of the stick. And then we also have the carrot. We oversee international programming money to support government activities, but we use that programming to further kind of drag the countries along to do a better job. A common thing that we're doing is passing a law that is in compliance with our international standard in the Palermo Protocol. The Trafficking Victims Protection Act is consistent with Palermo, and every country that has signed on to Palermo is supposed to have a law that is consistent. One of the things that often goes wrong is you have to identify that children can be trafficked, that they don't have to have any force, fraud, or coercion, and you have to say that children is 18 and under, not 12.
That's right. That's right.
So that's an example of something that is in there. Another thing that we do is we call it engaging in bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. I thought that is a mouthful. All that means is we are talking to countries and encouraging to do better. And we're OSCE or the Organization of American States. And so we try to talk to country specific to get them to improve the work that they're doing.
That's
and
right.
We also are responsible here in the United States for overseeing the Department of State and the Department of Defense, that we're all marching to the same drum and that we are all having a holistic funding. So when I was a prosecutor in Dallas in 2000, they created the first Dallas Secretary Blinken, as he chairs the President's Interagency Task Force, and that's where the tall Brenda Myers-Powell from the Advisory Council having these bilateral conversations with countries. One of the things I say is include and incorporate your survivors. Do it at the highest levels and at the lower ones. You know, the Dallas County chips and salsa in the middle of the table task force. They need to be at all those tables, not just one or the other.
That's right.
Have them. And sometimes it feels like we do have a few, and most of the time it's a priority that's attached to an obligation. So one of the things that we have we have two formal ways to incorporate survivors at the Trafficking in Persons Office. One of those ways is the TVPA requires the United States government to have a presidentially appointed group of lived experience experts. And literally this is presidentially appointed, not appointed by the State Department or DOJ, the president. And my office has the honor of working with the individuals who are appointed by the president. And one thing that's really good, because when this first was passed in 2014, we wanted to be sure that we didn't just constantly go back to those same survivors, but that we made space for new ideas and new perspectives and new experiences. And so that's how I got to know Brenda. She is a member of that presidentially appointed advisory council. And one of the first things I did when I came on was actually go to the PITF, the President's Interagency Task Force. I hooked my wagon to a star. Brenda and I walked in, and all the tall trees talked, but you know who talked first? Brenda.
That's right.
Brenda. And I remember she just like blew my hair back. I remember saying, I want her to be my friend. And so I really think that, I feel it's important that we gotta, if we're gonna encourage others to do good, well, then we better be practicing what we preach. And we realize that, because people roll off of this advisory council, but we don't wanna lose that expertise. And so my office did have the vision, before I got there, I can't take credit, to create a consultants network, so that people who have served on the advisory council, or people who haven't but are in the field, who have lived experience and excellent, they can serve as consultants and they can guide the government on how to do things. We have them as consultants, paid consultants, as part of our network consultants. And so we can maintain connection with these leaders. And one thing that I'm actually getting to announce is, because I took what was it's a requirement, and we're even required to pay them, to compensate them. It's the only presidential advisory council that has a payment requirement, which I think is great. So we pay all of our experts for their service. We are now taking this, my office, through our programming that we talked about. We offer training and technical assistance. Used to, we offered it to help be better prosecutors. We might send someone like Lauren to, El Salvador and help them be a better prosecutor, or improve their protection. Take somebody who's worked at a shelter and send them to insert country here, help them have better protection. We are now going to offer an opportunity through survivor experts to help other countries set up these types of advisory councils. And they have to be set up in a trauma-informed, victim-centered manner, and properly compensated and brought to the table. Because I feel like I want to encourage countries to do this, but I don't want them to screw it up, to tell you the truth. And so we are now going to have an opportunity to offer this training and technical assistance to do that, because I think one of our really big priorities is maintaining that survivor leadership. I know one of the first documents that I read when I came to the Trafficking in Persons Office was the report that the Advisory Council had written in 2022. And this report it distilled so much information into comprehensible. It gave a whole section on terminology, which terminology to use, which not to use,
right,
and why.
That was my point earlier.
And I remember I carried that thing around like the Bible.
That's right.
I so wanted
you should.
And I feel like I actually turned to the Advisory Council's report probably more than our TIP reports, because it has information from survivor leaders.
That's
and
right.
I just so want other countries to have that benefit. Another thing that I have done in an effort to kind of push what y'all have got down, but pushing it out to other countries, is when I have had the opportunity to represent the United States at what does multilateral mean? Many countries meeting. Okay?
Right.
I have brought a survivor leader with me and put them at the table behind the flag. And
That's right.
I share my time equally with my survivor leader and with myself. And they know, everybody knows that this is a member of my delegation. And it was the first time it was ever done at the OAS, which is the Organization for American States, which means everything from Canada all the way down to Argentina. And then we did it again when we met with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, which is the European Multilateral Organization. And we brought someone, and it was the first time that it had been done. But I feel like if we're going to be issuing a report and issuing report cards,
That's right.
as we say in Texas, glass houses, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So we need to make sure that we are doing it right. And so these are a few of the things that we're prioritizing. I feel like everything that I do is certainly influenced by the fact that I've kind of, and this is not just as a buzz, I feel like sometimes it's almost something really forceful about this. And so we need to have punish victims for crimes that they were
That's right. That's right. 100%. Yeah.
Credit to y'all, because this is something that the United States is not doing a good job.
Right. That's right.
I'll brag when brag worthy, right? Some of our stuff is brag worthy. And I don't know, this is actually something I would love for, y'all can have I call it a cuss and discuss, and let me know.
We got you.
We got that.
We can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
we can do that all
because
day.
there's such a disconnect between our federal system and our state and local.
That's right.
It is.
Yep, one reason.
A lot of the high-level crimes are prosecuted in the federal system, but a lot of survivors, I think, have state and local
That's
charges,
right.
and there's this disconnect, but I feel like we've
Yep.
got to do a better job with that. We in the office are trying to do a better job with other general forms of trauma-informed. We have 2 different resources that we hired our consultants as part of our network to develop, and it's required for all of the individuals in my office. We also have a training done by survivors that is for all diplomatic personnel, because you know, there's a USG person interviewing every person for a visa to the US. This is a great opportunity. They need to be trauma-informed in those
That's right.
discussions. And so I just want to say that, you know, we are trying, but we still have kind of a place to go. And I have often thought that I do think we've gone better. It's so funny, when Lauren was talking, I see your awful, horrible story, and I don't know that it can top that, but I'm just going to share it. So mine began 30 years ago, and I had tried a case where a man had physically and sexually assaulted his wife. And she testified against him, and then their 10-year-old son also testified because he had seen it. And then the judge, who was the son of a former judge and a former DA, did the big gavel, not guilty. And the child, it looked like he had the wind knocked out of him. And I was so upset. And so I went back and I was trying to be, you know, poor kid, of course, not daddy, not the judge, daddy was not. And so I go back to the judge and I said, Judge, I'd like to talk to you about this case because it's really, you know, I'm just wondering if I could have done something different, but I just worry about this kid and I worry about this family. And you know what he said? Who the fuck do you think you are?
Of course that's what he said.
Oh, wow.
And look.
Of course that's what he said.
And I said, I'm so sorry. I literally, Elisa knows me. I am like really nice.
I'm on for as much as I can because there's a lot of survivors that can't see this and need to see this. We all saw media releases, so if they can record, so can I.
And he said, you know, who the fuck do you think you are? And I said, well, I was just, you know, this case. And he said, this is my court and I can do whatever the fuck I want to.
Of course that's what he said.
And I said, of course you can, Your Honor. Yes, sir. I got a murder case in front of him in 2 weeks. I can't have. And then he said, and I am not sending a man to jail for beating up a piece of trash.
Oh my God. Woo, Jesus.
I've heard that, though.
You know what? That is exactly
I'd have been going to jail that day.
And I remember thinking, I did not have the ability as a 20-something poor kid from Waco, Texas. But you know what? I remember that every day of my life.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Fight till the very end, Lauren. I'm right there with you.
Let that keep you afire.
Wrongs, because it was so awful. Clearly, it sat deeply with me. I'm talking about it 30 years later. But it was so awful, and I really feel like when I feel distressed and frustrated, I think, okay, we are getting better than that. And I just want to say the same for y'all. I know you're exhausted. You are fighting so hard, and you have so much compassion and resilience, but compassion is exhausting. And resilience takes so much effort. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your exhaustion. And I hope that as you were taking care of so many,
Woo, woo, woo! Yeah! I like her. I'm gonna connect with her. I got very good
Really good speaker.
Yeah, I like her. She's cute.
So, all of that is going to be, well, I don't know, we got such a great group of speakers, honestly, I can't imagine them not following and standing up to that. And I think it was so appropriate, Cindy, that you're talking about the survivor leadership in this movement. And you and I have had many conversations about how important this is. And so I'm really excited to have up to the stage the first panel of the night, which is Voices of Change, Pioneering Survivor-Led Legislation, led by Lauren Hirsch. And I'm sorry I didn't open up my app fast enough, guys.
The ad rocks. We got.
Melanie Thompson.
Come on, baby.
Go, baby girl. That's my sister.
See, this is what bothers me. See this? There go my sugar.
Yeah. Well, that's.
See
That,
what kind of bothers me? That kind
I'd have to look at it before I get upset about it because I don't know what it's.
I would rather you get.
Yeah, I wanna-
I'll save it and let you look at it.
Or do you have my email?
No, but I'll get it. You got excuse me.
Look at this beauty.
Look at
Whoa! He took the tablecloth off.
What's his name again?
I'm not for sure.
Badass girl.
They're my sisters. Well, we do work on national level, but some,
Really honored to be moderating this panel, and when we were organizing this conference, we knew that this had to be the first conversation. People sitting up here, so it is just an honor to be able to work side by side with each of you every single day. Brenda, Myers Powell, Melanie Thompson, Audrey Morrissey, Trisha Grant. I will not introduce these amazing women. I guess I broke the cardinal rule of moderating a panel. But
we can support that.
Of course.
We can support that.
Of course.
in lots of different ways. Briefly, how did you come to this work? And we can start with anybody. Anybody's got the mic?
Okay, I start because I think I'm the oldest. I've been doing this work for 26 years. I
Yes.
started 26 years ago in Chicago. Went to a Catholic office and said that he was more concerned about the condoms in the lot more than he was about the women that were suffering. And he kicked me. I looked up and said, I'm going to the offices of the senators and checking them solution, because most of them were hiring services from girls as much as.
Come on. Come on. You're gonna speak.
I knew most of them were giving us the solutions to the things that we were taking down here. But I remember the first bill we got dealt with was the Predator Accountability Bill, which was a bill about girls getting services, or getting, it was a bill that became not a criminal bill, but a civil bill where you could sue your person or whoever started you in human trafficking. It's a bill that we could use on different places like strip clubs, places, businesses and stuff, and not so much as pimps, because you know they ain't got nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, they ain't got nothing.
But there's,
They ain't got shit.
You know what I'm saying? Like the
They ain't got no money without us.
Chicago who have, you know, was vetting out their limousines and houses. You know, there are a lot of big-time people that deal in human trafficking, so you can sue those, you know, type of organizations. So we do bring legislation that would help girls in human trafficking, and I also did a lot of mentoring and things like that. That was the beginning of me being a activist and a person out here dealing with human trafficking. I had, my trafficking took me all over the country. I wasn't just a local girl. I have been abroad and around the country, so I had a lot of experience, and then I had a lot of experience to bring to the table. And so that was my mission, to bring this to the table and experience things with girls and take them in and mentor them, you know, and also tell the truth about what was going on around the country. One of my places was California. New York, all the places around the country. Like I tell people, I've been to, when I was in prostitution, I went to New York, never saw the Statue of Liberty, went to, Florida, never saw Mickey Mouse, went to Niagara Falls, never saw the falls, because everywhere I went, I prostitute. And it was my dilemma to start out my life helping women. I was also attacked by the Grim Reaper in California, and all of those things I brought to the passion of what I was doing. So I started out 27 years ago. That's what brought me to be a person that wanted to, not only that, but passion.
And you do have a lot of passion. That is true. Brenda's doing extraordinary.
Yes.
I guess you're just going down the line. But I will say that juvenile detention, and in the facility that I was at when I was a kid, we had to interview the, I guess, warden, if you will, of this unit that I was in. But the warden had said, well, instead of asking me a column, it has to be like the size of my hand right here, that was on the side of the New York Times. And at the time, at 14, I didn't know how big the New York Times newspaper. But when I saw that and just seeing this little article about, this girl is about to celebrate her 15th birthday, and like, let's all wish her a happy birthday. I feel like in that moment, mentally, that's what changed for me. I think in that moment I said, I'm the oldest of 7. I have younger siblings and sisters that I'm thinking about when it comes to this. And I think that was the day that I realized that my voice can go a lot farther than just saying that I have a record or that I have this charge in my history. And from that point on, I did a lot of different things. Again, find me at the reception if you want to know more. But in those groups that I was a part of, I ended up speaking more and doing more interviews. And everybody who knows me knows that my first interview publicly had to gain the strength and the courage to find my own voice in that and recognize that I can go public and not feel any shame about it.
That's right.
So in doing all of this work with these groups is how I came to the work, and 15 years later, here I am with World League. So
Yes.
I'm telling you.
Get it,
I
girl.
watched her in Albany, and she wasn't 16 yet, and she stood before a lot of people and a lot of cameras.
Oh my goodness. To be honest with you, I would have been in a field that was attached to a part of my life that was so shameful and painful and traumatic. And another survivor told me about this organization that was doing their first training. Can you come and speak? I was like, okay, absolutely. And I, at that time, belonged to still do a 12-step program. And I never forget her saying, you can come and share and they'll pay you $75. And I said, wow, I'm telling people in the program my business for free.
Now that is funny. You go, baby, let's go.
So I showed up and through speaking, and then I began to train with my co-executive director, Lisa Gold Black Grace. And not because I founded that particular program, that is the best thing that we do. It is because it really is the best thing that we do.
That's right.
Because before I can do anything around policy, you have to know the community that you're serving.
That's right. Right. Come on.
And so I spent a lot of years mentoring young people and then getting to a place of hearing all these stories, and then Lisa and myself looking at, we have to make some change. We have to fight for these young people.
That's right.
And so, from working with young people and being in this movement and understanding the power of my voice, which took time, Lisa would always say, but and then the policy work just began to make sense. For the folks who don't know that, I had no idea what I was doing when I was saying training. There was no survivor leadership training. There was none of that. Really just shared, and then I started providing education and training based off of what I was learning and sharing my story.
And then it turned into providing this education, and not having to feel like I was re-exploiting myself so often by sharing my own personal story. Which I still find a lot of value in, and I still do share my story, and I want to share my story, but it's when I want to share my story.
That's right.
When I want to share my story. So I started doing that, and then I was providing education and training, and then I was partnering with other organizations, our colleagues who haven't had lived experience.
That's right.
So I needed to learn skills. All of us have things we're good at and things we're not so good at. So developing that, and the one thing I said I would never do, politics.
Right. Come on now.
Until I believe World Year, somebody reached out and said, hey, would you testify in Vermont against a bill? And I was like, ooh, in Vermont, that's the place that I experienced my
Right.
against these bills, that something bad could happen, bills could get passed. That started my journey, it really did, of like, okay, so we have a voice in this, we have a voice in politics, we have a voice in these professional capacities. Yes, we do. Even if we're not politicians.
That's
So,
right.
I know Lauren's gonna ask us more questions to lead into more of that conversation, but here I am today, and having Maine be the first state in our country to pass the equality.
Yes.
And in truth, we would not have been able to pass the equality model without Trisha's leadership. So just immensely grateful.
Keep up the great work, girlie.
And I would say that was a process, right? And we're gonna talk about that process. But before we do,